And welcome back to Adelaide International Raceway, where we're preparing for the Yokohama Series Production Championship event. Let's take a look how the drivers will line up this afternoon. Pole position has gone to car number 2, Bradley Jones in the Starion. From 2, car 3, Peter Fitzgerald in another Starion Turbo. From 3.15, Gary Walden in the Mazda RX-7. From 4, car number 6, Kevin Bartlett in the Starion Turbo. From 5.88, Ross Burbidge in the Starion. From 6.25, Roland Hill in the Commodore Turbo. Position 7.64, Des Gibbs in a Starion. From 8.6, Tony Gregg in another Starion. From 9.11, Michael Preston in a Commodore Turbo. From position 10.8, Mike Lynn in a Turbo. From 11.24, Ken Grinrod. From 12, rounding them out, Lindsay Steniken in a Commodore. Ready to go racing. And away they go. The Yokohama Bob Jane T-Mart's Production Car Championship from Adelaide International Raceway, and getting away smartly on the inside is Bradley Jones, but he's been gathered up here very quickly indeed. It was Gary Walden who made an absolute electrifying start. That will now shuffle Peter Fitzgerald back into his second spot, and they all approach the right-hander. It's going to be extremely tight as they take into the shell sweeper, but it's Gary Walden in the Goodyear Mazda RX-7, car number 15, and look at Fitzgerald trying to do it around the outside. Young Brad Jones comes up, takes second back. Fitzgerald is the next one through as they work the S's. Walden is out very wide indeed, but tries to gather it back in and lead them. The man with the run down the outside is going to be Brad Jones, and poking up on the inside, of course, is Fitzgerald.
Well, that's a bit of bravery from Brad Jones in the Perrier entry. He's gone straight through on the inside of Gary Walden in the Mazda and squeezed through into the lead as they come up onto the bowl for the first time. Walden back to second, Fitzgerald third, Roland Hill, then Kevin Bartlett. And this should be a great five-way scrap. Starion, Mazda, Starion, and then a Holden and a Starion side by side in the battle for 4th and 5th. And Hill out very, very wide in the Turbo Commodore, and KB's the mover in the field. He's the lap record holder, a time of 68.7. Their qualifying time's well underneath that. Bartlett had some problems yesterday with the turbo. They worked on the engine overnight and have rearranged a few things in the car as they plunge down into the right-hander again at the bottom of the straight. Brad Jones, car 2, Walden 15. Then Peter Fitzgerald, who's arguing at the moment with Kevin Bartlett. Now Fitzgerald through on the inside, up into second place, and a very tidy piece of driving.
Very much sideways coming out of there, but Brad Jones in the Perrier car skipping away to a good lead from car number 3, Peter Fitzgerald. Look at the scrap behind, though, with Gary Walden and Kevin Bartlett. Bartlett in the Bridgestone entry, and of course Gary Walden in the Goodyear entry. Then Roland Hill coming up very quickly indeed. There's the rest of the field trailing out as they work Yokohama straight again with Brad Jones in front. And here comes Bartlett down on the inside of Gary Walden. Takes him, a good move that from Bartlett.
The big thing with this race is its length. 20 laps, a little longer than the conventional production car type race, which will then start to expose some interesting comparisons with tyres. The lead car on BF Goodrich, the second car on Yokohama, the third car on Bridgestone, and the fourth car on Goodyear. Peter McCabe, that should give us something to talk about later in the race.
Yes, in practice, Neil, it appeared that the Yokohamas, and Peter Fitzgerald was obviously on Yokohamas, were the quickest. Some of the drivers were getting only 10 laps out of the Yokies. They work very, very effectively early, but then tend to go away towards the end of the race. So I can see that Peter Fitzgerald's plot probably would be to play a waiting game.
Well, KB's not waiting for anything at the moment, especially Peter Fitzgerald. Through on the inside and sneaks up into second place, and that was good. His car appears to be very quick in a straight line. It's coming out of corners rapidly, and the old stager knows how to keep it wound up.
Brad Jones at this stage will lead them by about 4 car lengths down Yokohama straight to Motorcraft corner. Kevin Bartlett, the mover in the pack, is now to second. In third is Peter Fitzgerald. 4th place, Roland Hill, and dropping well and truly off it. In fact, going to the pit area as I speak will be Gary Walden in the Goodyear Mazda RX-7.
Well, that's a real shame.
He looked so good. He was so quick off the line, and he's the early victim of the pace.
Perhaps a recurrence, Mike, of the overheating problems that have plagued that car in previous Group E events. Very confident that today's weather would suit it, but it doesn't appear to be the case.
Beautifully turned out unit. The Goodyear number 15 Mazda RX-7. Our camera boys well and truly on the spot, almost running down the try line. Meantime, Peter Fitzgerald trailing. He's back in third spot. Young Brad Jones continues to lead in the Perrier Starion Turbo. But I think Bartlett is perhaps just hauling him in marginally. Fitzgerald back behind them. Then a gap back to Roland Hill.
1.3 seconds is the gap that I have between Bradley and KB, and that's been static for the last 3/4 of a lap.
Publicly, most of the drivers were saying they would get through 20 laps. Privately, they were saying, oh, we're a bit dodgy here on rubber.
Yes, I would think so. Brad, in fact, started on the offside of the car. That's the left-hand side, which does all the hard work, with a much deeper tread depth than he would normally start with. And the tyres this morning almost looked like the sort of tyres you'd run if it was a wet weather race, with very deep grooves and only just a smidge off the outside of the tyre in terms of tyre buffing, which these guys do to try and put more rubber on the road.
He wasn't sure how he would tackle this race, whether he'd just take it quietly and make a run for it in the closing stages, or get out and boogie early and then say, catch me if you can.
Just picking the wheel up as they work the offside camber coming onto the bowl here at Adelaide International Raceway and down Yokohama Straight.
KB's made up, let me see, 3/100ths of a second on this lap, but that'll be constantly fluctuating.
He's very, very tidy indeed, is Kevin Bartlett, though. And again, the young lion up at the front of the field is one of the quickest boys in the business, young Bradley Jones. What a future he has in touring car racing.
The good news is he joins us at Amaru Park in our next telecast for 7 Motorsport in the Starion Group A touring car. Interesting to see how that goes against the big boys. Peter Fitzgerald still in 3rd position. He's been having some problems with this car in the last few race meetings. He appears to have brake problems. They continue to recur. He goes into a particularly left-hander, he said, and the brakes just seem to hang on. But let's take a look at these guys as they go through lap 4, and it's Brad Jones leading. Kevin Bartlett in 2nd position and Peter Fitzgerald in 3rd.
And welcome back to Adelaide International Raceway. Have a great scrap going here for 4th place, as the rest of the field disappears down the front straightaway. Brad Jones still the race leader, Kevin Bartlett in 2nd spot and Peter Fitzgerald in 3rd. Then this battle between the Commodores. 4th place held down by Roland Hill, and he hasn't got that locked up safely yet, Neil Crompton and Peter McKay.
Rolly's renowned for making great starts, but he seems to be consolidating his position here. Embroiled in a dice with a couple of Starions.
Whoops. And using the high groove coming out of there, and he's being swamped here. Preston making a big move.
Mike Preston's crew chief, Ron Gillard, has spent several days here trying to get some balance into this motor car. Commodores are not the best balanced cars, but in order to get some of the tyre wear away from the left front, Gillard has been concentrating on getting the thing working through this bowl section.
Well, they've certainly got their hands full at the moment, keeping these cars straight in this very tricky part of the course. Des Gibbs, the next driver in line in the Starion from Wagga, then Ross Burbidge in the all-white Starion.
Ross is the guy that's travelled furthest. He's down from Brisbane, put the car on the train to Melbourne, took it off the train there, drove it across. Doesn't have a pit crew of any description, but he did have a mate in Melbourne, and he's managed to coerce this fellow into driving across, and he's doing the wheel changing.
So I always told Neil that the whale way was the safe way. 3 shell sweeper in this Yokohama Bob Jane T-Mart's production car race, and it's getting pretty hot out there. Let me tell you, Preston's made his way around it. Roland Hill has been attacked from both sides at the moment.
Oh, Desi Gibbs. That was a nice old serve. He went slewing through on the inside and got Roland Hill. And she's all arms and legs at the moment as he comes through the left-hander and rejoins the bowl.
Saw Michael Preston flat spot a tyre there. Yesterday in qualifying, Kevin Bartlett did much the same thing, blew the tyre and nudged the wall on the exit.
Preston leading this bunch. Then Gibbs, Hill and Burbidge. The Queenslander doing it the tough way this weekend. This is one of the qualifying rounds for the Australian Production Car Championship. The venue still to be named later in the year.
They've got to hurry up with it.
Oh, they'll make the decision about 3 days before the race.
Great scrap going on here. Roland Hill, I thought at one stage, had it all sewn up for 4th place. Brad Jones, meantime, continues to lead in the Perrier car. Bartlett still running 2nd in the Bridgestone entry, and 3rd place is, of course, Peter Fitzgerald.
2 ex-Ralliart Mitsubishi drivers chasing 1 current Ralliart Mitsubishi factory driver.
And the other one sitting up here. 3 seconds the gap between leader Brad Jones and Kevin Bartlett in 2nd position. What have you done wrong according to that theory?
There we might see, yes, we have the gap from 1st to 2nd. That's Kevin Bartlett, and closing up appreciably on Bartlett is, of course, Peter Fitzgerald. That could be an interesting one to follow. You tip, Peter, that Fitzgerald might play a waiting game for a while, start to apply the pressure. They work their way through the Shell sweeper and now down to the S's, and this is where the scrap is. Let's take a look at the Castrol GTX race splits to give us an indication of first back. Bradley Jones, race leader, 43 100ths of a second clear of Kevin Bartlett. Less than a second back to Peter Fitzgerald in 3rd, as courtesy of Castrol GTX. So Brad Jones at this stage with a substantial lead, but whether Fitzgerald can haul in and pass the wily old veteran Kevin Bartlett, should be able to tell in the next lap or so of this race. He's closer every time they record a lap here at Adelaide International Raceway, and sitting in the draft now of KB as they work AGC straight.
That's the healthiest 43 100ths of a second I've ever seen between 1st and 2nd. I want a few more of those anytime I get out there.
Bartlett in the Bridgestone Starion, and of course Fitzgerald in the Yokohama entry. This could be pretty forceful stuff.
While we watch KB fending off Fitzgerald, good news this week, or well, promising news anyway. He says he's very close to consummating a deal to run a Maserati bi-turbo in Group A competition next year. Has 3 or 4 potential sponsors smiling at him, and of course KB's been looking at this motor car for 3 or 4 years, always maintained it'd be a good jigger to drive in Group A competition, and now it's getting very, very close.
Bi-turbo, that'd be Hetero Jetro, wouldn't it?
Couldn't get a straight one.
Here they come out of the turn and working the front straight again. Peter Fitzgerald sits very, very close indeed to Kevin Bartlett. Bartlett moves across to the inside of the circuit, trying to break the draft. Meantime, Brad Jones is putting another lap on one of the slower competitors as they come up to the right-hander, the Shell sweeper. Their antics have been very entertaining over the last 2 or 3 laps of this production car race. She closes up here on the exit to Shell, down towards the S's. I think Kevin Bartlett would make Fitzgerald work for every centimetre of ground there.
I'm not sure whether Kevin is looking after his tyres or he's just run out of rubber.
Well, they all approached the race in different ways in terms of the way they profiled the tyre buffing on their tyres. The minimum tread depth you can start the race with is 2 millimetres, but in a longer race like this, many of them choose to end up with more tread depth. And they all had a fiddle around, and this morning they all had theories as to which was the best way to go about getting to the checkered flag first. But I think that Bradley Jones is the one who's come up with the right combination. He continues to stretch that gap, and I think that KB is beginning to fall into the clutches of Fitzgerald, and once Peter can get an advantage from the tow from the back of his car, I would think Kevin's going to be all arms and legs trying to keep him out.
I can tell you though that Bradley said earlier this morning that he wasn't all that confident of his tyres hanging together for all of 20 laps. He says the last 5 could be a bit dodgy.
Once again, Kevin Bartlett keeping Peter Fitzgerald at bay through Shell sweeper, now down to the S's. Brad Jones, meanwhile, is disappearing at the front of the field.
One of the interesting things is that although there have been a number of new cars appear on the production racing car scene, nothing seems to be bringing the Starions undone. And there's been all sorts of cars that have been mooted as being the goer. The Commodore Turbo should have been the one that took off and disappeared into the distance. The Mazda we thought on paper was a goer. But these cars here, and the two that we're looking at, Bartlett and Fitzgerald, it's
still there.
impossible to peg them back.
Look at this. Fitzgerald this time got the beautiful run down the inside. It's going to make life difficult for Kevin Bartlett. Let's see who's got
The grunt.
the grunt down the long straight at Adelaide International Raceway. I think Fitzgerald will come out on top perhaps in this argument. He's still not door handle to door handle, but he's in the right spot on the road.
This is character building.
Yes, it is. An old stager and a young lion. Oh, yes. Well, Gricey did all that ages ago.
I know who he did it to.
Yes. They come out of the S's. Well, that was rather forceful, and KB wouldn't have appreciated all that, but it's racing anyway. That moves Fitzgerald up into second. Kevin Bartlett goes back to third, and of course still out front. You can put the glasses down on him is Bradley Jones in the Perrier Starion Turbo.
I think you have to say that both of them did a great job then. They didn't appear to exchange paint.
Just real racing.
Yeah, thorough professionals, got through without any silly elbowing, and Peter Fitzgerald through to a clear second place. Although he may have just left that run a little bit too late. I'll check the gap again between Jones and Fitzgerald. Jones just heading down the very long straight. And Fitzy is now 3. No, I'm looking at this wrong. I've got 7.2 seconds. I don't believe myself. I'll check it again in just a moment. He couldn't have opened it up that much, surely.
Well, you were quibbling about 0.43 of a second or what?
Always ballooning about something.
So that great dice that we saw building up between Peter Fitzgerald and Kevin Bartlett. Fitzgerald now starting to edge away, as you can see after passing Kevin the previous lap. Jones, meantime, is running away with this one.
These Starions are leaded fuel motor cars, and at the end of this season they're due to get the flick from Group E Racing. But there is a move afoot by the competitors to retain them, to have a chat with CAMS to get approval to run them again next season, because they say it's a shame to just dump all of this money in motor cars.
I think that's a fair comment.
Well, there's a fair bit invested.
Yes, that's the big problem. Everyone comes up with a new idea for a one-make series or something that seems rather trendy at the time, and then everyone has to trash the motor cars. There's Brad Jones in the Perrier Starion Turbo. We've been following for the last 3/4 of a lap and making it look very, very simple. That's because he's very, very smooth. Brad comes down towards the Bridgestone S's. Peter Fitzgerald just came into view, as you'll see here. He's still got a couple of cars if he is going to make a late burst. There's Jones back onto the Speedway Bowl again, coming down Yokohama Straight. Out on the inside to the right-hander at Motorcraft, and we'll check the gap for you as he comes out of the bend now.
But at exactly 5 seconds between Brad and Peter Fitzgerald. And that's a pretty good healthy gap in this type of racing, or in any type for that matter.
To the right-hander. Brad Jones goes through in the Perrier Starion Turbo, car number 2. Pole sitter for this race, qualifying the 66.82 second lap. And still comfortably clear as he makes his way down through the Bridgestone S's towards the bowl.
Well, this has been a splendid drive from Bradley Jones. He's really doing a good job out there. I don't think he's got any pressure on him at all at this stage. The gap I've just checked again and it's remaining static. I'd say that the way things are shaping up, if Bradley can continue with this good driving form and get the Group A car mobile, then he's once again going to be a problem for a few of the boys when we get to Bathurst.
He's a great natural talent, Bradley, and he seems to have a lot of flair with his driving, but he's also a thinking man's driver.
Well, that's the gap, first, second, third. Kevin Bartlett in the background there. That's Peter Fitzgerald in the foreground, just disappearing. KB really out there on his own. He's in no danger of losing his position. And it looked like Des Gibbs, the next man through.
.45 heads into the pits. Not sounding the best. Lindsay Steniken, he doesn't see it out.
They just don't seem to have been able to get the mobile, the Commodores. I don't know why. They've got it all on paper. They really look the part. Plenty of horsepower, reasonable weight. Brakes and things all seem okay, but they just can't catch these Starions.
Into the last corner. And what a beautifully judged drive on the part of Brad Jones, pole sitter. And he comes out of the last turn. There's Glenn Dix, the flagman, going through his acrobatics as they cross the line for the Yokohama Bob Jane T-Mart's production car race today at Adelaide International Raceway. Brad Jones will pick up the win. Second spot will go to Peter Fitzgerald. Third to Kevin Bartlett, and those positions on the Castrol Oils Ain't Oil scoreboard.